Welcome to the Expert Exchange, the podcast where knowledge meets success, with your host, Joshua Carnes, and expert guests, John Spencer. Today's show is brought to you by Lion Business Advisors.
The content in this show is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. The Expert Exchange is not a fiduciary by virtue of any person's use of or access to this content. The Expert Exchange is not licensed to practice law or provide legal advice. Nothing contained within this show is intended to be an offer to either buy or sell securities.
Welcome to the Expert Exchange, the podcast where knowledge meets success. I'm your host, Josh Carnes, and on today's episode, we are going to be discussing developing a sales strategy that works for your business with our expert guest, John Spencer. John Spencer comes to us from Clear Direction. You can find John online at cleardirectionsd.com. That's cleardirectionsd.com. And with that, we're going to take a quick word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
At Lion Business Advisors, selling a business is not just a transaction. You've poured your heart and soul into your business. It's not just a paycheck, it's your legacy. The team at Lion Business Advisors is here to guide you through the process, ensuring your successful exit. Contact the team at Lion Business Advisors at 800-525-3542. That's 800-525-3542, or visit us at lionbusinessadvisors.com. Lion Business Advisors. Let the story of your next chapter begin with us.
So get ready to expand your horizons and refine your strategies as we dive into developing a sales strategy that works. On today's show, we're going to have John Spencer. John attended the University of Cincinnati before serving in the U.S. Air Force as an officer for over a decade. Following his military service, John transitioned to corporate America through GE's Junior Military Officer Initiative, where he spent the next 20 years honing his leadership skills. With over 30 years of leadership experience, John's background spans from managing multi-million-dollar revenue with billion-dollar business corporations to revitalizing sales teams in smaller Main Street businesses. His expertise lies in establishing and reconstructing sales strategies from scratch, drawing from his deep cross-function leadership background. John's goal is to help clients achieve their sales growth and objective until they're ready to onboard a full-time VP of sales. John, welcome to the Expert Exchange.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.
Perfect. So before we dive into today's topic and really dive into our discussion, John, I read off you know what I could Google from you, but why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, introduce Clear Direction, and tell me a little about yourself and what you got going on.
Absolutely, Josh. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to the folks here. I've always been a natural seller. I've always been attracted to it, through high school and all the way through. But I did take that detour into the U.S. Air Force for about 10 years. And when it came time, obviously, to make that next transition, interview with a lot of companies, and sales was the way to go for me. It just was a nice fit. So GE had that program you mentioned, and that was a great way to get into it. Big company rigor. At the time, GE was like number 2 or 3 company in the world, and allowed me to learn the trade pretty quickly and learn about corporate America. The good thing about it was that GE lighting specifically, and the neat thing about lighting is everybody has it. So you learn about every segment, and you quickly learn that strategy is about what not to do sometimes if everybody is potentially a client.
Yeah.
And I worked for GE, then 2 more 100-year-old companies in the electrical datacom world, and then I went to work for a semiconductor company, and that semiconductor company had a great idea. They had an LED that allowed general illumination, and their idea was that all lighting should be LED. Worked out pretty well. So
I would say they did okay.
It did okay.
The idea did okay. At least.
They had some competition at some point, but it was really different when you work for these 100-year-old companies. You're trying to move share around, and everything's about 3% growth is like a banner year or what have you. And then you work for a company that you can't hire people fast enough, and you ride that scaling up model. What's good about that background is I went to work for a much smaller company. At the time, I thought it was a small company, a $70 million startup, and then to a $30 million. And then I got into this mode of working for these smaller companies, realizing you don't work any less.
Yeah.
But because of the broad background that I had, and leadership and marketing and sales and channel development and so forth, I could help a lot of different companies, and domain wasn't really that important. In other words, their domain to their business. It was much more about that leadership and sales infrastructure And I helped run a backup PE-backed company here in Austin, had an exit from that. Was approached by a company called Sales Acceleration out of Indianapolis. They're a national organization, the number one going out and recruiting fractional sales leaders. They look for people, again, who have worked for large companies, managing teams of teams. It's kind of the background. The concept is you can quickly come in as a fractional into a much smaller company, say under 50 million, under 70 million, usually under 10 million, and you can move a lot more quickly, and they get a full set of skills beyond just the sales. They get all of our knowledge and experience. So that's how you can get traction very quickly. And I said, hey, that sounds great. I have my liquidity event, was able to make this transition. And since then, I've helped companies in several different domains that are much smaller than those big billion-dollar companies, certainly smaller than the Air Force. But don't feel like I'm working any less.
Yeah. It's we have a joke in our industry. It doesn't matter the size. You're in the smaller the deal, the more work there is. So, yeah. So, no, great. And thank you for coming on.
Sure.
So let's dive into today's topic of developing a sales strategy that works, right? So most people that are listening are business owners and they're trying to figure out their way. Let's take a step back. Before we dive into the sales strategy stuff, you kind of hit on fractional sales, right? So what exactly does it mean to be a fractional sales leader? How does it differ from traditional, like a sales consultant or something like that, or a full-time sales role? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's needless to say, when I'm going through discovery with a CEO or leader of a company, a potential client for an engagement, I have to answer that question, right? How does that look? So fractional quite simply means it's a fraction of the normal full-time. But doesn't mean it's necessarily cheaper. It doesn't mean that you're getting shortchanged. Just means that because I'm so experienced, it's the concept that I can do more in a short amount of time than your average person. So if you hire a sales leader, a VP of sales, or what have you, that isn't experienced, you may pay about the same. Actually, might even be cheaper in some cases, but they don't have the experience that I have. Contrast that to a consultant. Typically, not all, but a lot of consultants come in, they do an assessment, they also use some sort of a knowledge-based background or process, and they come back, and the saying is they hand you a book and tell you, advise you what you should do with your business, okay? And then pretty much they either depart or they'll come in and check back in. A fractional VP of sales or a fractional sales leader like myself, we operate. So we can do a thing where we walk alongside of somebody, but we're working only for the CEO in most cases. We're providing that direction and advice if that's what they want, in an infrastructure only engagement. My engagements tend to be a full VP of sales, or I operate as a sales leader. I come into an organization where they've identified that either the sales leader, the leader of the company, is doing the sales, doesn't want to anymore, and probably shouldn't for some reasons, or they don't have anybody. They've tried oftentimes and repeatedly not been able to fill it. So coming in immediately and operating to where, when I say operate, that means the sales team, if there is one, reports to me. Okay. So I become their boss. I have full hire and fire authority. Usually I have budget authority. Oftentimes marketing will roll under me and some of the other commercial things if they have sales enablement, a customer experience, et cetera. But I operate just like a W-2 employee would with that breadth of authority. The difference is I do that for 8, 10, 12, 20 hours a week, depending on what the scope of the engagement is. If they want me to move real fast, if they're looking at quick traction, then that engagement might be 2 or 3 days a week. If it's the normal strategy that I go into, the normal pacing, it's probably 1 day a week.
Okay. So here in Austin, Texas, we have got a ton of startups, right? We've become a little Silicon Valley, if you will. For those companies that are starting up, because there's a bunch, and we get calls all the time of companies in different places, what size company or when does a company hit the point where a fractional CFO or a fractional sales makes sense?
Well, the maturity of the company is definitely a factor we look at, no doubt about it, if I can help them. And that discovery will decide that. Typically, even a 1 or 2 hour conversation, we can help them, and I don't usually charge for that initial discovery. But Josh, I don't want to be, I have a rule of thumb. I try not to be the largest line item on their P&L. Okay. So the startups, obviously cash flow is an issue for them, cash burn. There's another thing fundamentally, the leaders of the company should be the first sellers of that company. Yeah. Right? Effectively. So I get a little uncomfortable when they're trying to bug out of their responsibility. They want to do the development of the product or what have you. They've got the great idea, but they don't really want to do the sales thing. Unfortunately, that's part of the gig. When you become a founder, you need to learn how to do that. So I can help them with that. There's no doubt about it. But I would say that it's safer to say that I usually come in post-revenue.
Okay.
Usually, if a company has money, some sort of seed round or a clear path to revenue, and they've accounted for a relatively large expense at a fractional level, I can do that. But can they afford me, honestly? Because I don't want to get into that situation constantly talking about the bill or what have you. So
you don't want to be the reason they fail. You're there to help,
absolutely.
so you don't want to be the reason.
I've been there. I've been in that PE-backed company. I know that the cash burn is one of the key. You have all these great ideas, but this cash burn thing, that clock's ticking.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm not saying that I can't help mentor and things like that, but that's really not a typical engagement for me. There's other people who can help that. There's get under the capital factory, some of these other accelerators, these incubators that can help them with those foundational issues. But once they get to that first plateau, they're making revenue, they're $1 million, $2 million of revenue. They got aligned to customers, and they have a problem typically. One of those problems that startups have is that they tend to have about 80 or 90% of their revenue in one or two clients.
Yeah.
Probably the company they used to work for, or they know somebody, and that's how they kind of got started. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's a great model to start. But how do they replicate that now? How do they make that like a reliant, repeatable process? And that's a little tough for them. Or maybe they're very good in the technical acumen, but they don't have a great leadership background, or they don't want to deal with the sales team. And I've had CEOs say, look, just deal with these. I don't even want to talk to the salespeople. There's that extreme as well. Funny. So the answer is there's a lot of startups. I go to a lot of these things. I've gone to the Austin Technology Council and Capital Factory. I go to the events and what have you. But somebody like me, they're not quite ready for me. Honestly, they need to mature a little bit on their own. And I'm making a broad statement because there's all kinds of scenarios, but typically startups are not my ideal customer profile.
Okay. It's those companies that are past that startup stage and they're a functional, viable product or service.
Where I hit the best, what I found, because I've been doing this for about 4.5 years, and you come in with all these ideas, trying to figure out where you fit, right? And I don't say no to anything because the discovery will kind of reveal whether or not I'm a good fit.
Yeah.
But in general terms, I'm looking for somebody that's already got that first level of revenue and productivity, and the CEO or leader, the founder, all the times knows what they're doing. But you can see signs that the company is still firmly rooted in what I call the loyalty level of their organization. The people that have taken that right up are just they're kind of being raised to the tide, even though they may not have the skill sets. And the CEO sees this, they know it, they've tried to fix things. So oftentimes I'll come in, and I know for me, it's green flags across the board. When I'm talking to the CEO doing a discovery meeting about a possible engagement, and all the signs are there that they're ready to move to a performance model. They're ready to say, look, I love these folks, but they ain't going to take me to where I need to go. The objective isn't to get rid of them or anything like that. But the objective is to bring in a team that can support the infrastructure of the company and to bring in disruption, plan, design, disruption. That's what I spoke about before about what the pacing is. Some people say there's no reason I can't scale this immediately. We have the product, we have the customer base, we have the funding. And I just don't have this team in place.
Yeah.
They're scaling, right? So that's a different thing. That might be a 3 or 4 day a week engagement. Let's go. Start hiring people, interviewing, get the things staffed out, make sure that the processes are in place to drive that. That's one scale. Oftentimes it's folks that are in a different mode. They want to, they're profitable. They don't want to break anything, but they do want to improve some of their operations. And, maybe I'm leading the witness.
No, you're good, yeah.
But I think that, what I found is there's so many things you can adjust, right? You come in, you do these assessments, and you, when I say assessments, they're both written and formal, but also observation, right? Because that's what you're hiring is that experience. And I have a lot of dialogue with the founder or the CEO or whoever the key leaders are. That's part of my engagement. It's in the agreement. I must be part of all steering committees. I can't go have a leadership meeting and not let me be part of it. I am.
Because you are a new leader.
Yeah. If they have a C structure, I'm in the C structure. If not, I'm a VP. You call me what you want, but don't make any big decisions that I'm not part of. Like a new product launch or what have you. even though I don't have anything to do with that part of my scope, I need to be aware of that. I can't support it effectively.
If you don't know about it, yeah.
And most of them appreciate that because they're used to consultants, they're used to trainers, they're used to helpers of some sort who just come and do their gig and leave. It's kind of unusual for them to come in here and have somebody come in that has a broad level of experience from all these companies and says, no, I'd like to go do that with you too. And so if they have contractor, I'll give you an example. This is a really important thing about fractional. People have a misnomer, and this is the way I operate. I'm not going to put everybody under the same scrutiny, but this is the way I operate. If I have an engagement and the contract that says it's 10 hours a week or 8 hours a week or what have you, one day or whatever, whatever the bound is in the contract, I don't get out a pen and record 6 minutes like an attorney does when somebody calls me. Oftentimes these are really front loaded. I put in a lot of time up front so I can really understand what's going on, so we can get traction, so we can put a plan together. Some of these plans, they're 4 and 6 quarter plans. So we have to know where we're going up front. So while they pay me like that, the reality is I'm doing a tremendous amount of work up front, which is why I usually structure my contracts for minimum 4 months, because I need that protection because there's an opportunity cost that I'm investing in their business. That's how I operate.
So I think you kind of hit on what companies shouldn't do when they're talking to you, and it leads us, you know, right before we hop into what sales strategies work, let's talk about some of those things that you've seen not work, right? So what are some of the, not horror stories, if you will, but what are some of those red flags that businesses and business owners watching this should go, hey, I'm working on my sales strategy. I need to make sure this doesn't happen.
Well, engagement wise first, I've got this list, and one of the biggest things is I said, look, you know what's going to happen process wise. These folks are used to you being here as the founder leader. They're not used to me being here. So as soon as I leave, daddy says no, they go ask mommy or what have you. So, you know, and you said that's a tactical thing for the engagement, but it's also representative of what's happening in the organization, because oftentimes that founder leaders, whether they know it or not, they're doing that in other departments as well.
Yeah.
They're the go-to person for everything. They feel trapped by their business, but they also put themselves in that position, in that trap, right? And so usually what causes things to fail, we can get a great process in place. We can even get good people, what have you. But ironically, it is the interference of that previously successful leadership in it to not allow the new organization as we've agreed to structure it to take flight. They can't leave well enough alone. They got to get their hands on lever, and they won't let people make mistakes. You got to do that. I mean, in low stakes environments, we create those opportunities for new managers to make mistakes, for new salespeople to make mistakes, you know, in a comfortable way. Maybe it's not the best way to put it, but at least find their traction.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what I see not working is the lack of focus on the people. They continue to invest in the product. They continue to invest in marketing. They do all those things, but they may not have calibrated correctly the type of people they're going to need for this scale of growth, the leadership. And in most cases, whether it's pre-engagement or post-engagement, it's a lack of that middle management. I hate to say it. I know accountants roll their eyes. It's head count. This guy's head count crazy or whatever. But you really want to have some. You want to have some redundancy, some purposeful overlap, so that if this person gets sick, somebody can fit in. That's the obvious thing. But also, you're grooming that next level of leadership. Ultimately, you're grooming somebody for me to leave. Right? We're going to find somebody in here, we're going to elevate them, or we're going to go recruit somebody in, but they need an infrastructure that comes in with a clearly defined structure. So I'd say it's the people both to go that are why there's a weak performance oftentimes. There might be some lack of knowledge on the process. Typically, if you're a CEO founder, you're on Google reading something, and they try different things. So that's the other thing I do see as a failure is a serial amount of trials on things. EOS, scaling up, eMyth, Sandler, you know, all great companies.
Yeah.
Not all great companies if you're doing them within 6 months of each other. You choose one, ride the bike a little bit, right? Find something you're going to use as far as a process. Find, you know, don't be swayed by every person that whispers in your ear or every article you read on Google. I see a lot of that, and it just drives the organization nuts.
It is tough for owner operators to, they know they need change, but to really accept change and let that in. So owner operators generally are the reason they get in their own way. But
I've never been to an engagement where I come in, they introduce me, we've made the decision to go forward, and And most of the organization, when I do my one-on-ones with them, confide in me like, oh, here we go again, right? Because they've seen somebody else come in, in some form or fashion. So I applaud that on one hand because they know there's a problem. They just can't solve it. And sales is a revolving door. The leadership's a revolving door. Now clients are starting to depart. The thing that really spurs them isn't that they haven't recognized that there's a problem or that they haven't tried to address it. It's that now at this point, the pivotal thing of bringing me in is it's starting to have consequences. Key people that no one denies are critical to the business are leaving, are talking about leaving. Clients are leaving. The money's running out, whatever. There's always that other element. When I come in, I don't pride myself that it was my LinkedIn profile that attracted them.
Yeah.
There's
an issue.
There's an issue, yeah, and they're actively seeking a solution, hopefully for the right reasons.
What are some of the key features that you see that help make for a great sales strategy?
Yeah, some of these are really basic blocking and tackling. But even those aren't happening. But let's talk about some of those. One is the people, so recruiting and training. So we got recruiting and retention. Some people put in that category. So making sure that folks are heard and doing those one-on-ones, making sure they understand their job. It's as simple as this. What is the job that we've hired you for? What do we expect you to do? What does doing a good job look like? What does it get paid? What do you pay me if I do it good? If you know those three things, you're about 80% done. And yet 80% of the people don't know those three things. They're always trying to read the tea leaves as to what the boss wants to do or not do or what whim it is. But if you take care of those things, so that's a compensation plan, that's a training plan, that's coaching and feedback. When you look at the actual operation itself, the process of selling, CRM is the most crucial item in there. For a lot of reasons. A good CRM run correctly, it doesn't have to be that sophisticated either. It could be really basic.
Yeah.
And it could be $29 a month or free in some cases. So don't go mortgage the company's future on one of the big names.
Custom build.
Yeah. I've seen that a lot of times too, and I just have to deal with it. But a CRM properly applied can help you do so many things from the lead generation side and marketing into the sales tracking. It can help organize a salesperson's week, month, year if they use it right. If they we call it good CRM hygiene if they keep up with things. And so teaching people how to set that up or setting it up for them and modeling how that works helps grab adoption to that. People usually have the software when I'm getting there. It's just not being used right or at all. And they feel like it's a punitive thing that people have to force them to use it. So get them to embrace the technology. With AI plugins coming on and that, most salespeople are getting a little smarter. If it makes their job easier, they can find more prospects more quickly. If we can figure out a way to do that, that's great. A lead generation system is critical, whether that's the individual seller doing that prospecting or the company scaling in some way, creating, the old model was like BDRs, SDRs, and that I have some thoughts on that, but certainly somebody doing inbound, outbound, somebody making the clients aware of you. That could be a blend of marketing. So somehow or another, you have to get the funnel filled on the lead side, and then somebody assisting in the sales. The other critical part in both that CRM will help one with, or any company with, is the post-sale support. Because a lot of times
handing it off to,
they always look at it. Go to 80% of the CRMs I go to, if they're set up at all, it's deal has closed, won, closed, sold,
done.
And it always should, in my opinion, I try and find two more stages. Who did you hand it off to? What else is happening? What about the 30-day follow-up? What about it's the post-sale support. I don't care if it's a very basic transaction on a $10 widget or what have you. Don't spam people to death.
Yeah.
But certainly have a considerate follow-up of some sort that implies that you really cared about their experience with that product or that service that you have. And people don't do it. Because here's the other thing, they don't pay the salespeople to do that either. People imagine this, their behavior is driven about how they're compensated oftentimes. So if you pay a salesperson to sell a product quickly, and you pay them to sell the most of that product, be careful. You might get exactly what you're asking for. You might get a salesperson who oversells, You might get one who doesn't care about things after the sale. Not good ones, but there are people who do it. You're driving this behavior. We say that salespeople are coin operated. I don't think that's true. The best salespeople I have, they like to make money. They're money motivated, those type of things. But they also there's a pride about their job. And they also understand, if they've been doing it at all, that they don't want to have to go create customers all the time. They want to maintain customers.
Yeah.
And so the problem I have sometimes is I got sales folks that are over servicing the clients. And so they're
not doing sales anymore.
Yeah, they're just like, okay. I think they got so. It's a sales leader recognizes that and says, "Listen, we respect what you're doing. You now have a team around you, Mr. Sales Human, and this person's job will get you the lead and help you. This person will help you with the transaction, and this third person will do the follow up. And if there's anything that comes up out of that, we'll come back and be sure to get you re-involved in it, so that, but you can trust that the company's putting a support system in place that allows you to go where your skill sets are best utilized, developing a new client or whatever."
I think you kind of hit on my next question here of you with diving into a CRM,
right.
But what other key objectives should a sales strategy define, or what are those key things that you're looking for in a great sales strategy when you walk into a business?
Well, strategy is pretty broad, but one of the things I'll tell you, I ask folks, even in the discovery, and it's pretty much indicative of how mature they are, is what is their unique value proposition? I know that sounds like marketing speak, but it's a reality.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who do something similar to you do. What do you do that's unique about it? And they say, well, it's not really necessarily it's unique because there's so much business out there. I'm like, let's talk about that a little more, because you definitely want to. It makes your job a lot easier if you can make something unique. Maybe that uniqueness is your ICP. Again, a marketing term, which is ideal customer profile. You can have more than one of those. You usually can have. You really want to have one UVP, unique value proposition, usually towards a channel. That's like a principle. It doesn't change. That's what's unique about us, how we approach customers, what have you. The ideal customer profile might be a little broader. You might have multiple, but you'd have established in most clients, mature businesses, where not to go again, where to go, where to focus. That doesn't mean you won't sell to people outside that ICP, of course, but this is where we're going to focus. Some brands, for example, if they're mid-level or higher tier, think about Mercedes. Mercedes has an A class, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mercedes doesn't exist for the A class. I'm sorry. But you want to create an aspirational brand. So everybody talks about the G-Wagon, the S class, or what have you. Same thing for Porsche and their 911 or what have you. That you have the Halo vehicles, the Halo product. But you create a channel that allows you to have that aspiration. So you have to have an on-ramp also. You don't want to just start at the top. Well, you might. Maybe that's when this company first starts, you got to start somewhere. But ideally, you would have this unique value proposition developed, an ideal customer profile around the demographics and psychographics of the ideal clients that you're trying to service, what that product and services that you're giving to them. And again, that can develop. It can be channel specific. You're doing healthcare for this one and industrial for this one or what have you. Potentially there's some variation there, right? But when I listen to the company, I look around and say, are they doing it by accident? Because that could happen. Companies call me in that are doing quite well. It's not a profitability issue. It's not a revenue growth. It's not even a company culture issue. But it is something in the leadership that recognizes that we've got all this stuff. It's about perfect. Why are we not scaling like all these companies I keep reading about? Or I go to Vistage meetings, all the other CEOs are blowing out of the water, and I just seem to be treading water, even though I'm more profitable. So there's some missing ingredient there, and oftentimes it's their failure to codify this, to put it in writing, to make sure everybody understands it. So that communication is crystal clear. We exist for this mission, this vision, this ideal customer profile, and we want to make sure we're constantly reinforcing our unique value proposition, where we invest, how we communicate, how we hire. Are the people we're hiring in alignment with that culture? Do they understand it? Is it just speak or is it real? Because we live our values around here, right? You better if you want to be successful. So I think that's, I don't know if I probably went a little far afield there, but I think that's I actually forgot your question for a second there.
You're fine. So we're kind of talking about some of the key objectives, right? Which I think you absolutely hit on. you hit on knowing your customer
Right.
and knowing who your ideal stuff is. How does market research really play into an effective strategy?
I think it's critical. It can be as simple and not that exhaustive as doing a competitive market analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Who else does what you do in your marketplace going after the same ICP? Let's just see what they have, what we have, compare and contrast. And usually that'll unveil some sort of a large gap you have, or maybe even a better appreciation for how far along you are. Maybe you just need to exploit that strength you have you didn't realize. It could be as simple as that. Obviously, you can spend a lot of money on market research.
Yeah.
There's a lot of companies who specialize in that. There's a lot of business intelligence systems that can scrape data and pull and indicate things. But on its most basic level, you need to know yourself, know the key customers who, especially if you're not totally groundbreaking, most companies aren't, to be honest with you. You can figure out that that market research is critical. The other thing that I want to touch on this real quick as well, because I think it goes back to the last question you asked me. What does success look like to the leader, to the board, to the investors, or what have you? We really need to understand that up front and frame it, because that's going to impact cash burn, investment, timeline, so many things. So many things are factored. If they've got patience, that's one thing. If they don't have patience, that's a different thing, right? So we have to, and I can, it also formulates how I approach the engagement. But ultimately, if the objective is to be the number one brand in Austin doing X, Y, and Z, that's critical. If it's just simply to allow the owner to exit in 3 to 5 years, that's
a different strategy.
It's a different strategy. If it's maybe this whole thing's about legacy for them. It's about it, and my focus does become Junior. Maybe I'm here to basically model what Junior should be doing when she's, of whatever age or whatever maturity that the owner wants. So all those things up front, what is the end game? And then that'll come back and it'll dictate so many things, including the measurements we have. If you tell me, I have had this. I've had people say, hey, I'd like to double my business in the next 12 months. We can do that. It just takes a lot of cash, and most of the people you love around here won't be here. Or, hear me out, we could put a 3-year plan together that also doubles your businesses, builds a brand, does this. So, I mean, it's not that the two are mutually exclusive, but depending on the scenario, we really need to look at that. That now will come back into much more measurable things. KPIs, key performance indicators, or any other metrics we want to use. And when we actually put a strategy in place and we go into the tactics, we now look at the leading indicators. These are the activities that we want to measure that tell us, are we on the right path? These are the things that are the lagging indicators. A lot of people spend most of their time on. What were your sales last month? How many clients did you get? Necessary, crucial, and hopefully my God, if the CFOs are not on that, then we have a real problem. But the KPIs done correctly can start indicating where you need slight adjustments. If you're not getting enough new inbound leads, and depending on what your business, actually every business, I know I shouldn't do this, but I talk to legal firms or some of the other firms, and I go, "How do you get your clients?" And it's always, referrals. I'm like, okay, well, define that for me. Well, the phone rings, I pick it up, and I get another client. It just magically happens. That's great. I'm glad they do that. But could they have gotten better clients? Could their business have been much larger? I mean, it depends on what maybe they're happy with that. They've got a lifestyle business and they're fine with that. But for me, that it's not usually a place for me in a business like that. This is the discovery. These are people who want more. They have a commitment to their employees in some cases. Maybe it's an ESOP. Maybe it's, they really feel they're driven. Their legacy is their commitment to all these people in the company that got them to where they are. And they feel like they're going to let the team down. Maybe there's a health issue that they know they're dealing with that everybody else may not. There's any of a number of factors. So we come in and we put those KPIs in place that tell us if we're on track or not. As a leading indicator. We look at the lagging indicators, but you need some sort of a dashboard or some sort of a scorecard. And that can roll all the way down to an individual contributor. It certainly should.
You hit on some of the reasons that these companies are reaching out to you, right? They want to double this, they want to grow this leader or something like that.
New channel.
What are some of the common challenges or issues that these companies are facing that cause them to reach out to a fractional sales leader?
In almost all cases, they've tried to solve it themselves previously and couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to go back to what I just said. I usually get all of my engagements are from referrals. They don't come in through advertising and marketing. I do that stuff for validation,
Yeah.
like any good company. But somebody that knows them and understands their situation, maybe it's an accountant, an attorney, an HR consultant, a DEI consultant in one case. I'm talking about all these folks that are giving me referrals and more. Their IT consultant. They've seen these problems internally, and it's a unique situation. And they know that because they know me, they know that I'm somebody they should talk to. That's how it comes in. But the truth is, sometimes the clients are, I don't want to say delusional, but they've learned false positives. What made them successful in 2001, 2023? What if you're in real estate in Austin, right? You might actually think you're really good.
Especially if you're a buyer's rep. If you're a buyer's rep in real estate in Austin, you're rethinking your life right now. So
I saw an article, was the other day, there's 27,000 active agents in Austin. 27,000. It's like the number 2 city in America or something. I don't know. But my point is that you learn false positives to this whole process, and you begin to apply those to new situations, right? The old model to the new situation, or you might have just got lucky, or you might have been in the right place, right time, or what have you. So they know that they've tried this, it hasn't worked. I sit down with them and I get them to reframe their thinking. Even in the discovery, we're already, although I'm not supposed to give any kind of diagnosis, I can't help myself. I try and it's someone's just low hanging fruit. I don't care if they ever engage with me. Please fix this now. This is bad. I just help myself. But I think that ask me that question again. Sorry.
Where were we? So, I gotta go up. The common challenges that companies face that lead them to even seek a fractional person.
Or help. The most common are stagnating sales, change in, like I said before, change in personnel, change in client. They're starting to lose clients. Things like the market, the channel itself is changing. There's macro impact. The interest rates are doing this. Access to cash. So their world has changed in some way where it's like, okay, I need help now. And so by coming to a fractional person, the cool thing about us, one of the nice selling features is that in most cases, beyond just a few months, you can let us know in 30 days. There's no long-term entanglements. So you get tremendous amount of experience, wealth of experience coming in, helping you, at least giving you another perspective, if nothing else. At the very least, you've got somebody else that's validating, yes, you are in a world of hurt, and we see these same things as a problem. I prefer not to operate that way only because that's more like a consultant does.
Yeah.
But there is a necessary step in phase 1 where I have to do this assessment and make sure what I'm seeing is what I see. And those challenges are sometimes they have a warped perspective.
Let's dive into that. So let's say there's a company that recognizes I've got issues. I need a change in leadership and I need to direct it over sales. What are some of the advantages of hiring a fractional sales person like yourself versus, hey, I want a VP of sales and I'm going to hire an employee on a 2-year contract? Like what are some, you were kind of hitting on it with some of that stuff, but what does that look like?
Well, oftentimes when there's a commitment, you're getting married to a VP of sales. And if that's a really expensive mistake, if it becomes one, because it takes you a while to get them on. It's going to take them a couple quarters to get up to speed. Oftentimes, it's going to take a couple quarters of lack of performance to get them out of there, and then you're right back to where you were. So you could lose 2 years very quickly. Oftentimes, as well, somebody that's going to come to one of these companies that's under 70 million or 50 million or certainly under 10 million doesn't have the level of experience that I do. So they're kind of learning on your dime a little bit, right? I get that same question, to be fair. I get questions when I get into an engagement that, well, you don't know what we do. You've never done whatever the company is.
Yeah.
You've never done blacktopping before. You've never done legal services. You've never done whatever. And so I always get that domain experience, and it's a valid one that I have to address.
Yeah.
But they didn't hire me for the domain experience. They're already a successful revenue generating company. They have the domain experience. But the thing that differentiates me from somebody they hire, because that's what they'll do, they will go hire deep into the domain experience. And the sales experience may or may not be there. In other words, the type they need, which is around transformation.
Yeah.
Or saving them, or whatever the situation is, turning around some sort of crisis situation or big opportunity. These people might be good at selling that product, that widget, that channel, but the likelihood they're also going to be good at coming in and recognizing where a company needs to transform and have the confidence and the ability to stay with it, even in the face of withering fire from the CEO who's feeling very uncomfortable. And I'm not going to give. This is the path we agreed to. And on the one-on-one, we're going to keep going this way, or we're going to agree to disagree. And I had the maturity, I think, to do that, and the experience. A VP of sales, a lot of these companies, 10 million under companies, they're on a different trajectory, right? These guys are trying to make a name for themselves, what have you. And ultimately, we're going to get to somebody like that. But we need to fix, there's some things that need to be fixed or put in place, or infrastructure needs to be put in place. Oftentimes, getting a C-level person from a Fortune 100 company is well beyond the scope of a $10 million company. Yeah. The fact is, I've gotten in places where there's a fractional CFO, CMO, CRO, CISO, and so forth. You can get people from the top companies in the world that are now doing what I do and have them around your table at your $5 million company. In theory, in practice, you should be able to move much more quickly. You certainly have 100 years of experience at the table or whatever, so you're not having to start from scratch. And plus, these folks know people. I know people. I network a lot with people, right? Like yourself. So you do
a little bit of networking.
A little bit of networking.
So yeah.
I enjoy it. I get a lot of energy from it. But the other thing is, I only have about 3 or 4 clients a year at most. So how do I help my networking partners? It's by connecting them to other people. How do I help my clients? It's by knowing these network people that I can bring into an engagement quickly. They need an attorney, an IP attorney. They need a commercial litigator. They need whatever. You have to know these folks. So that's the kind of value that a fractional brings, because we're not one-trick ponies. We're not, task-oriented only. At least I'm not. Some people do operate differently.
Yeah. So you hit on, only having 2 to 3 clients a year. So what does that look like for you when you're out there looking for companies to work with, or looking for companies that might be a great fit for you? How do you find that company? What does that company look like if you're only doing?
They come to me, and now I sound like this attorney as I was talking about earlier. But the reality is again, it's usually my referral network. In an ideal scenario, this is by intention. Yeah, it's my referral network who understands what I do, who sees me as a possible fit for their client or somebody they know. That's usually how clients come to me. Some people, I have had 1 or 2 that found me online and reached out, but that's not a repeatable practice. But what do I look for? I would tell you that I could, in theory, come back and focus on a certain. I come from a channel of 20 years, right? Yeah, electrical channel, lighting, what have you. I could have, obviously, gone back and said, okay, I'm going to go to all those people I know, all those relationships I built. And even as a business consultant, leader, sales leader, I would have said that's probably a pretty smart model. To be fair, I did things a little different. When I this gets into the why I do what I do. I did all that corporate America stuff across North America and flying and traveling and that. And even though I lived here, I didn't know anybody. I was basically sleeping here, going to the airport. So this whole experience, to take my skill set and finally put down roots after 20 or 30 years and help my community and help businesses in my community with prejudice. I only networked with people in Austin. I didn't even reach out to the people in the cities I used to live or what have you. I really focused here on my one-on-one coffees, on my other networking, what have you, to try and establish a business here. Now, try as I may, my network here has referred me to clients in LA and North Carolina, Boston, Maryland, wherever, Chicago. But and that's fine, because again, it's helping my network. So that I got a little off tear because when you look
No, you're good.
but I think it's important that folks understand when you go to a fraction. I think this is really important because fractionals being overused quite a bit right now. Like there was a gig economy was a few years ago. Now everybody's fractional.
Yeah.
And I want to be really clear. The definition of fractional, I believe, to sales acceleration that recruited me, and to people who do this, chief outsiders in marketing, which is one of the big marketing one, B2B CFO, these guys who, and so on. I'm not, I love them all, is that they're looking for people, again, who have developed a track record of success over many years and have risen to that level that they're a fractional. So if I'm going to be a fractional CFO, I've already been a CFO. This isn't for the director of finance somewhere that decides they want to go out and have their own business to become a CFO. That does happen. That's not the kind of fractional CFO goal I would hire. Yeah. The whole point is that you're hiring somebody who's got a little maturity, a little gray in the beard, or what have you, that you're bringing that to bear. And that could be I don't want to get too much on the age thing, but that could be somebody that's certainly been doing it for 10, 20, 30 years, right? But I just caution people that not every fractional is the same.
Yeah.
And the definition that I adhere to is one that's done it many times, year after year, leading teams of teams with companies with means and with major responsibility.
With the rise of remote work, right? So it's still happening quite a bit here in town, and especially here in Austin. But throughout, there's you've got all these quasi half and half in, half out. How do you approach managing and leading sales teams that are half remote or full remote or in? Because back in the day, sales used to be everybody shows up at Monday morning for that 9 a.m. coffee, right? So how do you approach that with this new working environment?
Well, maybe I was spoiled because in 1999, when I became a GE sales guy, I was in Kansas City and nobody else was. So, and so I've always been in remote sales teams. Even when I was in, my leadership at Cree, none of the sales leaders, I was thinking about this the other day, none of the senior leaders even lived at headquarters. We all flew in.
You mean remote sales isn't new?
No.
What?
No. In fact, it used to be a saying that, they would even buy a desk for salespeople. Why do I? That would just encourage them to come to the office. What do they do? They should be able to see. I don't subscribe to that necessarily either. But you get the idea. But the idea of hybrid, I've seen this with a technical staff. If you want to have the best programming engineer in the world, you do it on their terms, not on the terms of the company. I do believe the collaboration's critical. Clearly, and I think you can. I prefer a hybrid environment at best. Yeah. Even if we're all remote, because think about in terms of some of these companies that I deal with now and dealt with before. We're covering all of the U.S. and Canada. Yeah. So I've got people everywhere, right? So, but you find purposeful reasons for them to come together, and you can do some of that. We were doing WebExes back in the 20 years ago. This is not new. It's ironically salespeople are probably the most accustomed to this hybrid or remote thing. Now, having said that, there's nothing. I prefer a face-to-face. If I'm going to hire somebody, I will go through extraordinary measures to get into a room with them. I'll have them come back to corporate and we'll interview. Because they owe it to themselves also to see the company. I get a little concerned that somebody is okay just doing a quick 1 hour Zoom and making a whole life decision to change companies for another $200,000 job in their future. And they've never even been to the company. They haven't met anybody but me. They've only met me virtually. Salespeople are natural performers. Yeah. They interview real well, and I interview them real well. If I really want you for the company, I can probably convince you to come work for this company. Okay. Now, when you get here, you might have a tremendous amount of remorse. So you want to come and check things out. I really recommend that on recruiting. Recruiting's probably the most important thing I do. It is the thing that has the most impact for it's not all these other things are cool and they're necessary, but the people, it gets back to the people. I don't need to be cliched about this. People matter in business. It's not easy. It is not easy to, and I've made mistakes. I personally will not hire a salesperson almost at any level without doing a third-party assessment of some sort. Behavioral, personality, or sales-based, depending on what the role is. Remember, I hire broadly. I hire engineers. So depending on the engagement, I don't want to get too far on this. I go outside of sales. I help the company with what they need. I really come in on sales.
Mhm.
But when we find that sometimes the sales issue isn't a sales issue at all, it's a product issue, it's a customer support issue, it's a marketing issue, could be an HR issue. So all these things have to be, addressed. So I can hopefully add some value to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we get to wrapping up here, looking ahead, what trends do you foresee in the future of sales, right? Or how do you think fractional sales leadership, your role specifically, will evolve with sales moving forward in this new economy we're rolling into?
I think I think it's catching fire,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I'm saying. You have to do some sort of quality cut on it, but I think it's great that we have these people with so much experience. It allows any company to hire the best qualified athlete. And because, and we can do a lot of stuff virtually.
Yeah.
During COVID, we were all virtual,
Yeah.
right? My companies were on both coasts, so it didn't matter. I could still be effective. I think that's taught everyone in the world, but certainly in America, that virtual is not necessarily may not be preferred,
Mm-hmm.
but it can
It's a
be
thing.
effective. It is a thing. AI as a tool is definitely one that we spend a lot of time. There's not a day goes by that I don't use AI tools.
Yeah.
That's now given, and but it's not going to replace what I do. I don't have any fear of that. I don't, just like we were joking before about the real estate agents.
Yeah.
I don't think a good real estate agent is that afraid about the settlement or anything else because they've always been differentiated. They all, people aren't buying from them for those reasons. And I think it's the same thing here. Fractional gives the ability for people to hire somebody that's best suited. In some cases, domain experience might be absolutely critical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you can find somebody that's fractional in that domain. In most cases, under $10 million, I haven't found that to be the case.
Yeah.
But the discovery will unveil that. I think that the ability to find the right fit for any company is accelerating. AI will help with that. I also think that there's got to be a change in the recruiting world. Their whole structure has been about, much like we're talking about the changes with real estate a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
is I find somebody, they hire, and if they don't quit in 3 months or
Right.
6 months, they get paid, right? And maybe they should be finding, helping match fractionals to that. The truth is, I do more hiring than the companies do. When I come on as a fractional VP of sales, who do you think's hiring everybody? It's me.
Yeah.
I make that hiring decision ultimately, or I convince the leader to make that. So if they were smart, they would try and get a fractional sales leader or a fractional HR person at every company that's out there. So I think that's a shift as well. I think it's acceptable. I think CEOs have become, leaders have become accustomed to hiring what they need for when they need it.
Yeah.
I think, I don't think there's as much opposition. I mean, when I went to GE in 99, folks were still thinking about 30-year careers and stuff, right, at one company. And then I wasn't there. Just as a little aside, I did have office in Kansas City with the Walmart team. I had nothing to do with Walmart, but the whole Walmart team was there. And there was a gentleman there that had been an executive. He was 55, and at 55, they had mandatory retirement. And but he, given his whole life to this company, and he just by a chronological age. I mean, 55.
That's crazy to think of, right?
Yeah, it's crazy because here's another little tidbit that might help or may not help your audience. I gather all this data. We have a lot of experience talking to people, networking.
Yeah,
is that people have an issue with some generation, whether it's Gen Z or Gen this or Gen that or Millennium or Boomers or what have you.
Yeah.
The truth is, the folks with the money and the experience are your 55 and overs. I know we're not supposed to talk about age.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily get what you need as a company by only hiring somebody out of university. In fact, some people would argue that the universities aren't doing a great job in some cases. And to that tune, I'm very clear about this. On almost every job requirement I put out recently, certainly for sales and sales related, I removed the requirement for a college degree. It's immaterial. If I'm hiring an experienced person, you've been doing the job for 3 or 5 years, I don't care. And the other thing is, I don't care if you went to Notre Dame or Harvard or MIT. It's meaningless in this career field. That it's a skills-based assessment.
Yeah.
Okay, it really is. Can you hold a conversation? Do you have EQ?
Well, especially with sales, right? Sales is so much personality in the person. Not everybody's cut out for sales, but salespeople are salespeople. And so,
If you wanted to hire the best programmers in the world, they don't waste their time on university always,
Yeah.
right? I was at a thing last week and I learned this. I haven't looked into it personally, but Alphabet, Google, I mean, they don't care if you have a degree either. They don't care what school you went to. If you can pass the Google test, you're in. Because that's all that matters. It's skills based, right? And also creativity and experience trumps so much stuff. I would tell you when I have CEOs ask me which guy or gal we should hire and something, I always look for industriousness. Regardless of their background, do they have that extra, oomph and intelligence? And it could be street intelligence, what have you. I think it's almost, people can sense this, Are they full of themselves or are they actually willing to roll up their sleeves and do if we all had to go out and wash the car, would they all go out and wash the car?
Yeah.
Would they say that's beneath? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you begin to, and that is applicable whether we're looking at a CFO, we're looking at a chief investment officer, or what have you. I've been involved in all these hires. I don't care how smart they are, if they're a quant or what have you. I need to know that they will also do what's necessary for the company, that they will buy into the culture. That's really, that's important for me. That's what I would recommend.
As we wrap up here, those companies out there that are going, man, I could use some sales help. Maybe I want to talk to a fractional, or they're interested in reaching out to you. How does someone get a hold of you? What's the process look like of, hey, I think I want to talk to John. How do they get a hold of you?
Well, the easiest way is to email me, obviously. So it's js@cleardirectionsd.com. You can go to my LinkedIn, John E. Spencer. It's on LinkedIn. You'll find me.
We'll have the links to.
You'll have all that there.
Stuff
and so you can call me, you can text me. It's all it's so frustrating to me that, especially in sales, you go into LinkedIn, you go to their contact information, and there's no email or phone number. I'm like, and nobody looks at DMs. I shouldn't say nobody. Most people don't look at DMs. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay.
Now, once found, the commitment I make is I don't take on an engagement unless it's good for me. And what's cool about Sales Acceleration is there's about 195 of us across the U.S. So even though we own our own business and it's just a process we use, if there's somebody that fits better the model, or if I need teaming, or you've got multiple locations that need to be addressed, I've got a team behind me.
Nice. Well, John, I greatly appreciate you coming on today. I think it's been really educational, especially for those people who are moving up in those upper ranks and starting to look at those C-level and place those C-level people. I think it's been really informative. So if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, when you want to keep the conversation going, you can reach out to us on X at the Expert Exchange, at the EXP Exchange, or visit us on the website at expertexchange.pro. That's expertexchange.pro. If you want more resources or information on today's show, we'll have links for all of John's stuff on the website, or you can reach out directly to him at cleardirectionsd.com. That's cleardirectionsd.com. And remember, success is a journey, and we're thrilled to be a part of yours. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Expert Exchange.
Content on this show is information of a general nature and does not address the circumstances of any particular individual or entity. Nothing in this show constitutes professional or financial advice, nor does any information on the show constitute a comprehensive or complete statement of the matters discussed or the law relating thereto. The Expert Exchange is not a fiduciary by virtue of any person's use of or access to this content. You alone assume the sole responsibility of evaluating the merits and risks associated with the use of any information or content on the show before making any decisions based on such information. In exchange for using the content, you agree not to hold the Expert Exchange, its affiliates, or any third-party service provider liable for any possible claim for damages arising from any decision you make based on information or other content made available to you through the show. The Expert Exchange is not licensed to practice law or provide legal advice. Nothing contained within this show is intended to be an offer to either buy or sell securities.